Hey everybody, it's Amanda Christine here, coming at you with another video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about autism spectrum disorder and Asperger syndrome, aka an invisible condition for some, including myself. Before I talk about my background, I'll give you a general assessment, a general explanation of what autism spectrum disorder is. And autism spectrum disorder is a bio-neurological developmental disability that generally appears before the age of 3. And this condition impacts the normal development of the brain in the areas of social interaction, communication skills, and cognitive function. And individuals with autism typically have difficulties in verbal and nonverbal communication, social interactions, and leisure or play activities. And, you know, some, but not all, some individuals with autism often suffer from numerous comorbid or coexisting conditions such as allergies, asthma, epilepsy, digestive disorders, persistent viral infections, feeding disorders, sensory integration, dysfunction, sleeping disorders, etc., etc. And the common thing with autism is it's more often diagnosed in young boys than it is in girls. But, that has since changed. It's getting recognized more and more in girls than it is as equally as boys. And since autism was first diagnosed in the United States, this has climbed to an alarming 1 in 44 children in the United States are diagnosed with autism. So, a lot of people like myself, children, teenagers, young adults, need help and support to get acclimated to adapt to the neurotypical world because of our condition. Anyway, and what was once recognized as a separate condition in DSM, which is basically let's see here. Sorry about that. The American Psychiatric Association's Diagnosis and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It was its own separate category up until 2013. And in that time, all forms of autism were combined under one umbrella diagnosis, autism spectrum disorder. And some people consider it a mild form of autism spectrum disorder. Some others consider it just a neurological difference. And some people even call it a high functioning form of autism, which for some is controversial or pejorative and whatnot. But as I was growing up, I've always heard the term high functioning, low functioning, so it's pretty hard to change that mindset, basically because that's what you've heard, seen, read on the internet about autism spectrum disorders and such. So my story is that I was developing pretty normally as a baby. I might have been delayed a month, like with standing up on my own or walking without assistance, that sort of thing, but just by a month. I was hitting my strides in other ways, and that sort of thing. I will say that I was born a month premature. Who knows if that had anything to do with my development, later on, but you can never rule that out. Yeah, so basically, in between the ages of 2 and 2.5, my parents started noticing some drastic changes in me, where whatever strides I had hit, speaking wise, had either completely plateaued or went out the window, where I wasn't even talking to my parents at all or saying anything, speaking really hardly at all. And I was I would zone out in my own world. I'd stare at the TV, looking at, like, let's say a Disney movie or cartoon, and my parents would call me and I wouldn't respond. And, they thought that I was deaf. Doctors thought I was deaf. Um, and, I was lacking eye contact with my parents or strangers or whomever, extended family members. And they also started to notice that I was starting to become picky with certain foods that I would eat. Um, Basically my thing was I would eat foods that were, long and cylindrical tubes, like whether that was celery, carrots, french fries, hot dogs. I was very particular about what I like to eat, and there were times where, in my family where it wasn't exactly understood what was going on. Uh, like when I was, let's say, 2.5, there was like a story where I was at my dad's side of, I was at an extended family member's house, and basically, one of my relatives put out a spread, and my mom was telling this person that, she doesn't like any of these foods, she won't eat it, and this relative said the kitchen is closed. And, that was just a lack of understanding there. I wasn't even diagnosed yet. So, anyway, you fast forward to like Easter 1995, and my another member of my side of the family was very intuitive. She was in the education field, taught for a long time, seen things, heard things, and she suggested that I might be autistic and to get tested at Children's Specialized Hospital, which is exactly what my parents did. I got tested at Children's Specialized Hospital in Mountainside, a little borough in New Jersey, in like North Jersey. Anyway, yeah, so all the tests were run on me regarding my sense of hearing, which was another thing, another sign at the time. I was adverse to certain noises and things like that. Um, and I initially got the diagnosis when I was like 3 years old, 3 months. Um, yeah, I was 3 years of age, and I was diagnosed in May of 1995 with pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, because they didn't know exactly where I was in that autism spectrum, so they just gave me at the time the umbrella term that they would use for it: pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, pdd-nos. So, and I don't recall if this was around that time. I know I was young when I was also diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which again, it could be a comorbid condition. Like most people who have autism have another condition as well, at least another condition. And regarding my sensitive hearing, I spoke about that in my misophonia video. And obviously, around the time I was diagnosed, misophonia was not mentioned in the medical realm until 2001. So everything regarding sensitivities to like foods, textures, tastes, and the sense of hearing was just lumped under, oh, she's autistic. She has sensitivity towards things, so sensitive hearing is just one of them. So, yeah, anyway, as I talked about in my last video, I've probably always had misophonia, even around the time I was diagnosed with PDD-NOS and OCD. So, anyway, what my parents did was they got started on early intervention right away. I had a social worker. I went to a special needs preschool. At the time, it was DLC. I'm not sure if that still exists. Again, this special needs preschool was in Mountainside. And I was basically being taught to, like, various things, increase my vocabulary, you know, I was also delayed in potty training as well, unfortunately. So they were trying to, get me to use the toilet and not like, have accidents or anything like that. And also, it was discovered, backing up a little bit, it was discovered that when I went to the eye doctor's office after I was diagnosed as being on the spectrum, that my central vision didn't develop. Again, it could have been a case of developmental delays with my eyes, or the fact that, my dad is nearsighted and my mom is farsighted. So, I was obviously going to have issues with vision. But, um, once I got the glasses, I thrived in that special needs preschool. And at some point, I didn't belong there necessarily anymore because I was advancing so much. And that's when I went to the Windsor school Windsor Learning Center at the time for the grammar part, the grammar grades, like kindergarten to fifth grade or so, let's say. And the whole potty training thing was finalized there, and I was good to go. And I was speaking in full sentences, like 5 or 5.5, something like that. And basically, I went to this special needs school, like from Windsor Learning Center to Windsor School, like fifth/sixth grade to eighth grade. Um, and like I said, I really thrived, did well in school. And it was when I was 12 and a half when I saw my pediatric neurologist. By the way, if I didn't say this before, the school was in northern New Jersey in Pompton Lakes. Anywho, when I was 12 and a half, my regular pediatric neurologist determined that if my central vision had developed and I had 20/20 vision, I probably would have been diagnosed off the bat as having Asperger syndrome, which is what he diagnosed me with when I was 12 and a half. So I went from having pdd-nos to Asperger syndrome. And that's when, around that time, and maybe even before then, I started to notice that, my situation was different in regards to school and things like that. Like I wasn't going to school in my town. My hometown at the time. And, all my neighborhood friends, my next door neighbors were going, like I said, to the school in town, and I wasn't. And, that sort of thing. And, I started to notice, my fits or meltdowns, if you want to call them that. So I was having the meltdowns whenever I would feel overwhelmed, or, a change would occur, or if I was late, things of that nature. And so basically, I continue, like, throughout my grade school years, I had cognitive behavioral therapy, social skills therapy for a period of time when I was like 13 to 14 years old. And then I continued social skills therapy with another therapist, at the start of my sophomore year of high school. And speaking of high school, going to Union Catholic Regional High School was the first time that I've ever been in a regular school setting. Of course, I had an individualized education plan, and I had supplemental instruction once a week while in high school, and I thrived in high school. I nearly had a 4.0 GPA, but it was like 3.98 or something like that because of math and science and whatnot. But, I was just a tick under with the math and science, but, I generally did well in school. I excelled in English, Spanish, history, other other categories, other courses. And I would say I did really well. And this, like I said, the social skills therapy continued from age 15 to 18. And, obviously I was off to college, and, had to transition from, living at home most of the time to living on campus most of the time at Rider University. And initially, I stayed on campus all the time, didn't go home on weekends, but then I realized, it was probably best for me that I got a break from my school setting and, went home on the weekends and chilled there with, my dog at the time, Rose Daisy, and stuff like that. And I had accommodations as well in college. I got extended time on tests and things. You had an option for time and a half or double time. I figured, yeah, because of the whole processing thing, I took longer to process information and took longer to take tests there, because of that. So I basically opted for time and a half because I didn't think I needed that much time to complete something, but I still needed a little bit of time to ensure I finished my test and took my time with the test. And college was a mixed bag. Like, there were some semesters I did well and some semesters I did subpar. And I ended up graduating with a 3.0 GPA, which in comparison to high school, for me wasn't great, but, I got through. I was able to get in at 3.0 and whatnot. And, fast forward to today, and, autism for me is an invisible condition, an invisible disability because of all the early intervention I had. Most people don't necessarily think, they look at me and they don't think anything's wrong with me or that I have something. And, therefore people treat me, as normal. And then when I have a meltdown or freak out or something, they're like, what the heck's going on? And I will say there are, situations, that could come up, like, hypothetical situations, like in the work world that could come up if you end up, like, working in retail or something like that, where, you're setting up before, your, let's say, like a store or stand is actually open or ready to operate, and, a customer either comes by the door or comes by the stand, inquires about something, and, initially you're like, give me a minute. And you're not like necessarily turning away a customer. You're just taking a moment to collect yourself before you actually can help them. And, some people, whether it's your supervisor or your manager, might see it as you're turning away a customer when that's not actually the case. And, you might find yourself in hypothetical situations where, you know, you agree with your supervisor, what have you, and you say, I understand. We're technically, I got it. We're technically ready for like cash transactions and things of that nature. And your manager might say, or your supervisor might say, never turn away a customer, never, we're ready enough to help them or what have you. And, you're like, okay, I understand. And then sometimes you get hypothetically, you get a supervisor or manager that says, if you understood, you wouldn't be arguing with me. And you don't know what to say with that, because if you respond any other way other than an apology, you're going to start another argument over an argument that didn't really exist. So, yeah, all you can do in that situation is like, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize for being such a stickler about certain things. And, at the end of the day, these things happen, whether you're a neurotypical or an atypical person with autism, that you just, you come across certain situations, and you would just, ask that potential customer, like, are you paying with cash? Because even if your POS is not like set up at your job or whatever, you could still take a cash payment until you get everything going, like with the Bluetooth card reader and things like that. But I digress I digress there about hypothetical situations in the workplace. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me here, and I hope this video was informative and you could take away something from it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Amanda Christine, and I will see you another time. Bye.